the capabilities of these primitive ancient civilizations as being, okay, machining marks, tool marks, like these giant circular saws, tube drills, precision, and there's elements to precision, and one of those is symmetry. And there's been some interesting studies done on the faces of giant statues. One in particular is the face of Ramses. There's a statue at Luxor. They've since put the head back up. It's up now 30 feet in the air on top of the statue, but it used to be on the ground. And again, Chris Dunn was real seminal in this. He went and took a photo, like bang on, like very front on, and then what he did was you take a copy of that photo, you make it 50% transparent, make the original 50% transparent, you take one and you flip it like on that horizontal axis, then you overlay them, right? So you would see any, like the left to right, it's like overlaying the left side on the right side, and it's perfect. It's this face here, but I wonder if you can find the picture of Chris Dunn. That's actually my...
There's your video right there.
Videos there as well, where I get into it.
Website, but it's not that picture you're asking for.
No, it's similar, but it shows other aspects of, well, the same radius of tool being used to cut. But what's interesting about the symmetry, it's perfectly symmetrical, left to right. Now, this isn't a feature in humans.
The thing is, with channels such as Uncharted X, Lost Ancient High Technology, they tell such a great story, and it's so convincing. Engineers and stonemasons and experts and perfect symmetry. Like, who would lie on the internet? It's not a lie if you believe it and you don't know any better, but it does become a lie when you know better and still keep selling it to such a large audience. To sell this much larger story of a stone is just an introduction to what they're really selling underneath. But symmetry and statues, they know better by now, yet they're still selling it. Let's look at what they're calling machined, computer-guided, precision symmetry. Christopher Dunn is the source for all of these. He's, referred to him. He's an engineer, CNC master, metrologist. His argument from this guy knows it all. But well, let's look. So this is one of his statues taken by a photograph. Now you can see the measurements which he has eyeballed from a photograph. Now, 0.02 of an inch. This is just terrible, but okay, this is one of the examples Christopher Dunn uses and Lost Ancient High Technologists such as Uncharted X uses. Now let's look at those ears. Now there is all his own mark, so I am cutting and pasting things together, but I'm not manipulating. You can look at their original photos. So we compare the ears, you extend that line up, and we can again just see the difference between the inside of the ears there. Often I see in the comments, but this is erosion. Erosion doesn't lower the ears down and this type of stuff, but just to colour that part in, and you can just really, there is running right along where the ear touches, and the other side is not. We also have the little part of is it a philtrum, that part of a nose. Now, there's a difference between this side of a lip and that side of a lip. Now, literally, this is what he says. I'm not making it up. That this is a machine mistake. So when there is a flaw, they'll say, well, this was a flaw made by the machine running too fast. When it's perfect, that's clearly a machine mark. When there's a flaw, there's a machine mark. Now compare the eyes. And you just, again, pull them over. These eyes are just not symmetrical. No. Precision symmetry. Now, he's talked about using that flip method. So if we go back to the eye, so now I'm going to take one eye and just flip it and compare it with the underneath. Here we can see on the right-hand side. Again, not symmetrical. There's no way engineer, master, metrologist could even with a straight face say that that's similar. So this is asymmetrical. The measurements, and Chris Dunn has been forced to admit that this is just eyeballed. It's just not right. You could even look at a little bit, just the weight of a nose, but we'll come, because this is not the one that's mentioned particularly in that Joe Rogan interview. So ears, look, it's just the whole thing. Great piece of work, but this is not precision symmetry. Sculptors do this stuff all the time. Here's the important photo, the one of Ramses, which he highlights, which is at the front of thumbnail of his video. These are the types of way they bamboo with all these. Look at these circles. Look at these circles. It's just a way to give it scienciness. But let's look at that photo. So using his own squares, again, I'm not fiddling with his photo. We look in a little bit further. Unambiguous exactness. Geometry speaks of unambiguous quality and exactness. Trey says, I'll just make it a little bit lighter. And again, very clear asymmetry in here. That's because of the Mendes, the headdress, and well, that could be blowing in the wind, but yeah, so given that, maybe that was part of a design, but that alone, so we can just say red, not symmetrical. Let's focus in on that part of the face. Let's look at the ears there. Compare them, again, using his own grids. Now, these own circles of symmetry, precision, don't even match up. So he's not even using the computer any sort of way. But again, look at the ear. Look at the ear. It's just not symmetrical. So there, and then we compare it over to here, and well, it's way outside of the ears. Lower part of the ears, looking well again. So this on that side, and then I have to shrink it down to that to get it to fit on the other side. Let's look at the nose, centre line. So again, his centre line of the circles doesn't match the grid. Bridge of the nose is heavier on this side, clearly. Even whichever centre line you use. If you use the yellow centre line, it's even worse. But again, we just compare, and the symmetry just doesn't exist, and it's blatantly obvious. Again, this master of CNC machining, engineering, technology, production. How could he not see this? So what we have is not a very strong lack of symmetry. Is it the philtrum there, the little part coming off the nose? This side is the left-hand side, much heavier. Top of a lip. And so again, if you see if this was erosion, it would erode. The erosion doesn't cause the ear on a granite statue to fall down a couple of inches. So these are just asymmetrical, and this is a similar trick you'll do with other photos. So look, wow, look at that. It's science. Look at the geometry. We had some. Let's take a golden spiral and obviously shrink it and bend it to fit in place. Obviously, this is the golden rectangle. Again, that's just, for all of these master builders and mathematicians, whatever, who come there and they immediately see the symmetry. You have to laugh at them. But I'll give them one thing: they got balls. They really got balls to say this with a straight face. Look at the chin. That's the beard coming off. The same with the Ramses statue. Every single feature is asymmetrical if you compare it to modern sculpture. Okay, I just use that same look. Just add a bunch of circles, follow the line, blah blah blah. So yeah, this is, and then they get to go on huge podcasts, hundreds of thousands, millions of views. There's a saying that a doctor only cuts one person a bad doctor only cuts one person at a time. A bad teacher, ruins the whole class. Okay, this might be a little bit of fun, but I guess this is what really got me into someone has to challenge these things. I was standing, I heard teenagers, one of them must have watched the Brian Foster Uncharted X video, and you can't do it, they can't, and the perfect symmetry and all this, and the other teens are sitting there and they're going, oh yeah, and he's reading the script to them and they're believing it, and it's just false. And if you're going to pollute the minds of the youth, this does cause real world damage. This isn't just some little joke on the fringe of the internet. They often say, well, we're suppressed, but the algorithm loves them. The documentaries love them. Netflix loves them. History Channel loves them. They are reaching millions of people and getting this just obvious falsehood. So for the expert, if you are an expert engineer and you don't spot this, you are not an expert, and you're useless. This is so obvious. So there is no excuse. This is not symmetrical. People like Joe Rogan, Danny Jones, so many. You will see podcasts everywhere, and oh my God, that's amazing. Does anyone even do basic fact-checking? I know that these, like Chris Dunn, Uncharted X, Bright, they know this, but they still persist with it because this is one of their foundation stones to their cult. And if one foundation stone falls, then all the others begin to fall. And so they can't admit it. They're lying about this. And on top of that, it really is, you know, like, it's schoolboy stuff to be able to spot this, and yet they, you know, engineer, expert, this is how they get you. You know? Chris Dunn makes jet engine parts. If Chris Dunn makes jet engine parts, get your ass off the plane if him or anyone he works with has contacted them, because they are just incompetent and that's the charitable explanation, or they're dishonest. But so, yeah, Joe Rogan, you really got to get someone like Dr. Miano on, Scientists Against Myths, because you're spreading BS to the world. And you had the sense to take Malcolm Bendall away, and he's linked with this group, and you should be a bit more suspicious of what this or these people orbiting Graham Hancock are really like, and they're not honest, or they're not diligent, or neither both. This thing needs to die. It just needs to die. It is just BS.
Human is perfectly symmetric, different nostrils, different eyeballs. It's also not something that is done in artwork. So, you know, people often say, well, Michelangelo, you know, he carved David. It's a beautiful statue. I've seen it. It's incredible. But it's human. It's not symmetrical. Symmetrical is, you can't achieve that degree of symmetry just by eyeballing it and doing it by hand. And it's also something that's not really human. I think some of these statues almost look a bit inhuman because of that symmetry when they're up there and they're staring at you, because it's mind-blowing to actually go and look at them. But yeah, it's the other aspect is the most efficient way to create that would be to say, well, if you were going to design it in a computer, it's like, well, I'm going to create half this face in a program and map it out, and then I'm just going to reverse it and say, well, that's the other half. It's literally the most efficient way to do it, and that's kind of what we're seeing in some of these statues.
Go back to that image, please.
It's virtual perfection.
And what's the explanation for this that modern archaeologists use?
They did it by hand, right?
They do it by hand. That's literally what they say. You just don't. They're not engineers and construction experts at the end of the day. That's the problem. So it's very difficult to engage them on those specific details. And I've taken many engineers, master stonemasons, stone carvers, construction guys, and a lot of them see it immediately. People that understand what it takes to both work in this material and to work at the scale that some of this stuff is worked in.
So he's talking about master stonemasons. These experts, and you know they can't explain. They see it. Oh, but well, okay. 2010, they're still making colossal statues. Tends to only be the Jains in India. They're quite wealthy and they can afford to do this type of thing. So these giant colossal statues, symmetrical, are still being made. And I will skip that one. Now, the head sculptor, how did he do it? He made a smaller statue. He's marked out all of the spots, and so he knows, you know, here is the centre line. Move one over, and that's how deep it is. And then we move over, we go a little bit deeper, and he's created it's a quarter inch off across the whole statue, which is a hell of a lot better than the Egyptian one, but he's using ancient techniques to create this symmetry. So again, these construction and master stone and carvers can't explain. I don't believe that they know their own trade. How do they do it? Well, you know, you get the centre line. Now, a plumb line, we still use plumb lines. You know, you can hang it from the ceiling, and then you can detect defects in wall. Well, exactly the same principle. So that would be the tip of the nose, and then from there you work, and you can work back. The plumb line runs straight, and then you carve back from that, and you take the measurements, and you move it over, and you carve back, and you move it over, and you carve back. And this is again the same as a pantograph. You take the measurements and you transfer them over. This was making a 1-to-1 scale. If you do it on a big statue, or you just scale it up. Literally, what the people who do the work still do today to create at least as good or even better work. And so again, this lost ancient high technology will always, we've spoken to the, and here's a letter from the quarry, and here's a letter from True Stone Corp, and they would have to put the boxes together in 6 pieces. Well, I can get a letter from anyone, who doesn't know what they're doing, and then they go, well, it can't be done because I don't know. But if you go and look at the people who are actually doing these things, they do know what they're doing and they are capable of it. And again, it's just, they're still selling these lost ancient high technologists, the spiral core, the precision Serapeum boxes, the symmetrical statues, the impossible polish, and now they've moved to the vases. Because, we'll get to that in future videos, but Joe Rogan, again, I saw Danny Jones, they're just all over the place, and people are just swallowing this nonsense up because these lost tech guys have got their script down really well, but under the slightest checking of the basic facts, why don't, they're so interested in the stone, why don't they know this? They don't show, well, they do know, they don't show you. Their business is built on censorship and cherry picking. And censorship is the main one, because if they were even 1% interested as how they proclaim, they would be looking and know these things. But so either again, dishonest or incompetent.
Who was your most difficult, where you're doing the interview, you're like, dude, I can't wait for this thing to finish?
Oh, I don't know. I've had a few of those. I've had a few that weren't released, because the person was like a con artist, and I realized while they were talking that they were full of shit.
Oh,
yeah.
no shit.
I had one of those pretty recently. You got to know. I mean, sometimes people are just playing you, and it's a scam, and you realize, well, this guy can get this information out. This could potentially harm people, want to invest in his bullshit idea, and then you find out the person has a long history of being a scammer. You're like, okay, I can't have this one. But most